Welcome to another episode of the Hockey Hub. Sophia and Kasey here with you guys on this Monday. It's Monday, right? Yes, it's Monday. I was like, is it Wednesday? I had a long weekend. On this Monday, guys, we have, as usual, a guest. Ty Anderson is going to join us from 98.5 The Hub. We're going to bring him in just a sec. But just to go over the lineup, we're talking all things Bruins as usual. We're going to get Ty's take, and he's got some hot takes on what the Bruins have done in the offseason. We're going to look ahead to the new CBA as well in the NHL. It's not taking place this season, but as of 2026, 27, we have some rule changes, so we're going to discuss that. And Kasey, we are stretching out as much as we can from development camp to fill time over here, okay? We are stretching development camp. We're going to be talking about that, even though it's just a week long, probably for 2 months. But jokes aside, we have a great interview from a guest coach at development camp who has taken a job to be the coach at Princeton, or assistant coach, at Princeton. And she talks about kind of her journey in and around hockey and has had a lot of success coming from the Pride, et cetera, et cetera. So we go one-on-one with her. And Kasey, for the first time, we're doing some, I don't know if it's fan mail, but fan comments.
Oh, the mailbag.
The mailbag, yeah. We're going to be addressing a little bit of that. But without further ado, because he's waiting in the shadows and I don't want to keep him waiting, let's bring in Ty Anderson, first-time guest on the Hockey Hub. Ty, thanks for being here.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to get your hot takes, even though fans who know and love you, Bruins fans, know you very well, about your opinions and that you write and also appear on 98.5 The Hub. So let's kind of begin right there. We have some clips. We're not going to throw to them yet, but we're going to begin with your maybe overall grade. I don't know if it's changed since free agency opened up, but your overall grade of the Boston Bruins so far this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, factoring in the draft and free agency and the trade they made, I got to go a C- right now. I wish I could go a little bit higher, but, watching this Bruins team for 82 games last year, the biggest takeaway I had was they need scoring help. And I think they got some help, but for the future. You get James Higgins, you get Will Moore, you get Cooper Simpson in the draft. These are guys that you look at and see like high offensive ceilings, but that doesn't help a guy like David Pastrnak right now, or a guy like Charlie McAvoy right now. And I feel like they needed so much help, not even so much help, but just another guy who can score consistently. And it feels like they came up a little bit short there. And so I have to go C-, but I have to also understand that this is clearly a multi-year process based on what Marco Sturm has said and what the Bruins management has said since all of this kind of started. But I'm a win now person. I want to be entertained now person. So for that reason, I have to go C-.
I have a two-part question for you because I'm new to the Boston area, but I feel like a lot of the Boston sports are kind of going through a lot of this wait and see vibes and feelings and emotions. So for one, in a word or a phrase, how would you describe or try to temper Bruins fans for the upcoming season? And for two, how do you kind of go against this instant gratification for all of the fan bases?
Yeah, I say like the one word I would use is unfortunately patience, and Bruins fans are not patient. And listen, I respect that. The Boston Bruins fan is the last, sort of representation of that old Boston misery. Everyone else has had multiple titles. The Bruins have had one, 2011. It's one of the best moments ever. We still talk about it in my family, my friend groups. We love that summer, best summer of our lives, but that Bruins fan being told, hey, be patient, it's going to be a hard sell for them, but that is the sell right now. You have to be patient. And this is where you can get in some trouble here, I think, is that, you don't want to have your fans waiting for too long, right? And I think especially the fans can look at this team right now and say, well, you have David Pastrnak in the prime of his career. You have Charlie McAvoy in the prime, Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, Elias Lindholm. Like, it's going to be a hard sell for a lot of fans because they look at their roster and they go, no, we have a bunch of guys in their prime right now. We should be trying to go for it. But, being last year what it was and getting James Higgins, there is an element there of having to be a little bit more patient than maybe you thought you'd be this time last year.
On that note, okay, so to your first point, you're like, let's give them a C-. They needed more scoring and more help. And in one of your clips, you talk about not punching the puck into the net. Again, we'll throw to those in a second. But can that help come from the roster, the guys who maybe underperformed, just performing to where their expectations are and where their contract is, and obviously the health of a couple of guys. Like, yes, I agree they needed more scoring help and they didn't get it, but they're supposed to have it with the guys that they have, and they didn't last year. So can that happen? Can that be the factor that obviously Sweens and management are counting on?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Sophia, because you look at last year and the way things ended. Not a lot to celebrate, but the way that Morgan Geekie, Elias Lindholm, and David Pastrnak played, especially together towards the final few weeks of the season, like that's really encouraging, right? It's just, Can you get scoring below that? Can Pavel Zacha, who it felt like hit 50 posts, in the first 3 months of the season, can the pucks go in the net this time, versus hitting iron or a goalie making a great glove save? So if that happens, they're in good shape. But for me, it's like that multi-year process of you lose Jake DeBrusk and you don't really replace him with anybody. And now you lose Brad Marchand, you don't replace him with anybody. And it's like, all right, those are two key parts of your offense for years and years. And so you want to try to make sure that you have enough bullets in your chamber, so to speak, so that there's not incredible pressure on guys like Geekie and Pastrnak every night. And so I don't know if they have that, but what I will say is that I think this roster with a healthy Hampus Lindholm, with a healthy Charlie McAvoy, with a Jeremy Swayman who can bounce back, like that's probably more what they need now versus what they got a year ago. Like if those things show up, maybe you don't need the scoring as much, and guys like me are going to have to, get in front of a microphone in December and go, hey, hand up, I was wrong. They have enough scoring because the defense and the goaltending has been so great.
Well, I think a lot of people are on the same page as you, just trying to figure out if the Bruins really did get adequate support for that top line or projected top line. But let's throw to your reaction when you found out about Arvidsson and Tanner Jeannot before we get your full take on it right here.
Victor Arvidsson, who waived his no trade, going to Boston for a future mid-round draft pick. Look at the disappointment on Ty's face.
Why? Just why? Why? That's stupid.
Boston has reached agreement with Tanner Jeannot on a 5-year deal worth $3.4 million per. Ty Anderson just collapsing.
Why trade Trent Frederick? It's the same player. You know nothing about this guy, though. God, this is so annoying. Just when you think they're turning the page away from big and tough and all that and getting more skilled, which is what they need, what's Tanner Jeannot going to do? Is he going to punch the puck in the net? That's what you need. You don't need this player anymore. It's so annoying. It's fine money. Whatever. It's not that. It's 5 years for a guy that you don't really need. I hate this offseason. I hate it.
It's the why. I felt that in my bones for you, but unfortunately, I'm a little bit of a Tanner Jeannot girl. Covered him in Tampa Bay when I was with the Lightning. But I'll tell you this: I first want to get your opinion on Arvidsson because that was one of the first moves that made the most sense. Fans weren't really feeling like the Bruins bled to make this acquisition happen, but then the skill set around him is he could potentially help on the power play, something that suffered last season, and then hopefully contribute 20-plus goals. But why was that so painful for you, Ty?
I just think that, again, this is me being a victim of expecting a little bit more, right? And perhaps that's, it was Arctic Monkeys who said anticipation has a habit to set you up for disappointment. So maybe that's what happened to me. And I do think that I was thinking a little bit higher, right? And if you're going to acquire a guy like Victor Arvidsson from a team like Edmonton that gave $10.5 million to Evan Bouchard, you're kind of hoping that there's going to be a sweetener involved there, right? Just beyond just the player, maybe a pick swap. You're sending out a fifth, but you're also getting a third, something like that. Like that's kind of, in my opinion, how you maximize an on-the-fly retool, which is what the Bruins have kind of, not outright said, but that's kind of been the what they've implied is that this is going to be a quicker kind of turnaround. And so that's my only complaint there. It's a fine player, and yeah, they clearly think they can get him back to what he was in LA. I think it was 22, 23. I think he had 25 power play points. So if he can get back to that level, that's going to help both himself and the Bruins power play, which was bottom 5 in the league last year for a good while there. So you believe in the player. It's just market-wise, are you extracting enough from the team you're trading with, right? And that's kind of what I come back to for maximizing a retool, is that I feel like with Arvidsson, you didn't get enough. Even, again, just a mid-round pick swap where you're jumping up 2 rounds. I feel good about that. I feel better about that than I do right now, hoping that he returns to form for just a 5th-round pick. I'd like a little bit more certainty there in terms of what I'm getting back to help out a team like the Oilers get out of their cap jail situation.
I want to go back to a point just because I don't want to get too far away from it. But you obviously talked about losing Brad Marchand and hoping Pavel Zacha, and we talked about Morgan Geekie keeping up the pace. But I was just thinking about the guys that know how to drag the Bruins back into the fight, and Marchand was one of them. Patrice Bergeron, retired for a couple of seasons now, was one of them. But Marshy leaves such a big gap on so many levels, even if it's not scoring. Who do you anticipate stepping up? And maybe it's maybe it's Corrali, like we talked about, that you're not going to get on this show. You're not going to get this like prolific scorer with Sean Corrali, but a fan favorite and a guy that was part of the locker room in the era where the culture was at its best. And, I can name a couple of others and the existing guys already, but who do you see, if anyone, or do they still need that, being able to fill the gap of someone who can just drag the Bruins back into the fight, not just with his on-ice performance, but just character-wise and effort-wise?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously, Casey, you mentioned Tanner Jeannot. Like, he's going to be part of that group, right? Like, Don Sweeney outright said that he's going to be a guy that drags the team into the fight. Corrali's another great pick, Sophia. I would honestly throw Nikita Zadorov in that mix, too. I know he plays on the back end. He's not going to be a scorer, but I felt that he really kind of found his voice as a leader post-deadline, which is not an easy task. When you're on a team that's not winning, when you're on a team that is struggling but trying their best, it's hard for the morale not to dip. And it felt like Nikita was a guy who really kind of tried to set the tone as best he could every single night. And I really think that year 2 of Nikita Zadorov is going to be a really good get and a good add for the Boston Bruins, just given how he found his game, his voice, whatever you want to call it, late in the regular season. It really did feel like you got the version of Nikita Zadorov that you paid for down the stretch. And that's a huge development for the Boston Bruins, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh, I love that you mentioned him because I'm a big fan of Zadorov. And funny enough, towards the end of the season, he was one of the guys who was actually leading in rush chances of all things with his big old frame. And Mason Lohrei kind of talked about the leader that he is and the advice that he gives. And it is hard, especially when English is your second language, when to find your voice and that leadership positioning on a roster such as this. So I love that take, which kind of brings us to the fact that a number of these guys, Arvidsson being one of them, Tanner Jeannot being accommodated already with the LA Kings system. Now this all fits under the scope of Marco Sturm and what he's potentially going to be injecting here. Do you feel like this team's getting closer to finding an identity with those new acquisitions?
I think so. And I say that really because when you watch the LA Kings, and I know Marco was coaching with the Ontario Reign, but like you want to have the same kind of structure and system and all that. LA was a very strong team when protecting a lead last year. They also have been a really great team when it comes to limiting the high danger looks and things of that nature over the last couple of years. And so when the Bruins were the Boston Bruins that we all know and love, and they were competing for championships, they were really good with a lead. They were really good on home ice, and they made life easier for their goaltenders. Yes, their goaltenders made big saves when they needed it, but that's kind of been the hallmark of the Boston Bruins as we know them. And so if they can get back to that, it feels like that's what they want, right? The league is scoring more. We'll all acknowledge that. The Bruins need to score more. But, the foundation of their success for a long time has been being good at home, protecting a lead, getting good goaltending. The LA Kings got all 3 of those things a year ago and have for quite a while now. And so if they can continue to do that, like that's not a horrible model to have in your back pocket for 82 games. It's just, does it translate in the playoffs? But for a team that finished with the 5th worst record in hockey, you got to get back there first. So I don't hate that foundation idea if I'm the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, and adding to that, which is like cliche, but it is so true. You need to be hard to play against, and the Bruins weren't last season. We heard Don Sweeney say it 100 times, so I'm not trying to, just regurgitate what he was saying. But the Bruins weren't last year, and every team in the league is, but the Bruins have lost a little bit of that. You bring up Casey, and you guys bring up the LA Kings and what Marco Sturm could bring. Can we just get your thoughts, even though it's old news? Yes, we know he's the head coach. What is your take on Marco Sturm being at the helm of this team, and what his identity or his thoughts might give the Boston Bruins?
I love it. I like this so much better than bringing in a guy like Peter Laviolette. No disrespect to Peter Laviolette, but this is a chance to kind of the Bergeron and the Marchand Krejci window, it's closed. It's time for a new era, and when you have a new era, you should take a chance on a new kind of voice. And I think a guy like Marco Sturm, who has helped bring some players along in the LA system, helped bring players along with the German national team, still a younger coach. I think he can relate to some of the younger players a little bit better. He was also, he was a guy who was part of some trades, and he was, he's been on good teams, been on bad teams. And I think given the uncertainty of the Boston Bruins right now, I think you want a younger coach who can identify and relate with the players, but also be a shoulder for them to lean on during bad times, because the Bruins had some bad times this past season, and they hope they don't have more of them. But in the event they do, you need to have a coach who's not going to be overwhelmed by the situation. And he's going to realize, hey, this is a hard market, but if you can do this, this, and that, the fans here are going to love and respect you. And I think having that kind of presence is what this team really needs right now, because you know what you're getting from the guys at the top, like we've talked about. But below that, it's a lot of wild cards right now. And I think to have some stability and a youth-friendly voice, I think can go a long way.
I think the stability point out is tremendous.
Go ahead, Casey.
Oh, no, I was just saying the stability point out was big. Oh, now we're on VMix, so our delayed response.
This is tough. Sorry, Ty. We're going to be talking over each other. But Casey, go ahead. Take it away.
Okay. I was just going to say, you pointed out the fact that, like, him being young, the way that he can work with young players, and Nate Thompson talked to him being able to spot potential, which I think is huge. But we're seeing the scope changing a lot. Young players are being a lot more vocal, requesting trades, a lot of these things. Do you think a coach like Marco Sturm can help the development timeline stop being so antiquated? Because you throw kids in the system, you wait for them to develop for 5 years, but now players want to come out of their first or second year of college and play.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, you talk to players on and off the record, and I think the young athlete, like, they're okay being told difficult news, but they want to know the why, right? Like, you can't just say, no, this is how it is. You're a player, we're management, or we're coaches. This is why. Like, they want to know, okay, why am I not making the team? Why am I not playing? Like, I think that's the biggest, I would say separating factor between the athlete of old and the athlete of new is that the new athlete wants to know the how, the why, and where they factor into things. You can sell them on a difficult message if they get it. If they don't get it, they're not going to like it. Then they're going to want to trade, or they're going to basically say, like, throw their hands up and say, what do you want me to do? So I think that being an effective communicator and a direct communicator, but also not being completely disciplinarian, I think that is something that it is good. And I think you saw Joe Sacco kind of doing that late in the season. I know he's not here anymore, but, guys would make a mistake and he put them right back out there. I think that's a better message now than stapling someone to the bench or banishing them to the press box for 10 games in a row. Like, it's on the job learning now for a lot of young players. And I think that's what you have to do as a team. The Bruins have to embrace, hey, young players are going to make mistakes. They're not going to be finished products. But the best way to get them to be is to play in the NHL and play through it versus sentencing them to 3 years in Providence of weekend back-to-back-to-backs. Like, you got to get used to the pro game, pro recovery, and I think a guy like Sturm is going to be helpful for players in that fashion.
Ty, I totally agree. I always warn my guests, and I forgot to warn you, I'm someone who loves to play devil's advocate just cause. But I'll just start by saying I agree with that statement. But to play devil's advocate, what's the thought on being in the NHL, making a couple mistakes, depending on, I guess it depends on the player. But then if you're in the spotlight and you make those big mistakes early on in your career, that crushing your confidence, like maybe your weight isn't where it needs to be yet. Maybe the speed factor isn't where it needs to be yet. And then you're playing against these men and then you lose some confidence and that kind of like ruins a kid forever. Is that just like ridiculous, or is there any truth to that?
Well, I think it can be true, but then you find out a lot about that player. You find out that player's probably not part of your long-term, plans. I do believe in, iron sharpens the iron, right? And I want my players to sort of develop through that and understand like that it's not going to be easy, but you need to rise to the challenge. And I feel like it's harder to find that out if you're giving guys cups of coffee, playing 8 minutes in a fourth line role, and then they go back down to Providence. It's like you kind of like, and it was harder to bring those kind of players in because A, didn't have a lot of them because you were always trading draft picks and trying to just kind of find fourth liners when you had that core that we've talked about, that Bergeron, Marchand, Krejci, like you didn't have a lot of open roster spots. With this team, it's kind of hard to find guys that are locked in up front. Besides David Pastrnak at right wing one, you have a lot of flexibility here with your lineup. And so I feel like you can use that now, right? And if you don't, that's a damn shame, right? And if you're losing games 2-1 and you got a guy down in Providence who's put up 15 points in 20 games, and we're going, why can't we see him? What's going on? And they're telling you about the details and everything like that. It's going to be a harder sell for both your fan base and I think the player, because the player knows how you're losing games. The player knows that you're not scoring enough goals, and he goes, I'm a goal scorer. Why am I not up there helping? And so you want to avoid that happening, I would say. And so if a guy comes up and he looks out of place for an extended period of time, you kind of know, right? You kind of know what you have there, and you adjust properly. But I feel like, Sophia, you never learn if you're only playing guys for 10 minutes, sheltered role, fourth line role, and that's kind of it. And so I hope that there are some younger players that can come in and grab a hold of an expanded role, and that the Bruins give them the rope to do that. Those are two things. You want them to rise to the challenge, but the opportunity has to also be there in a legitimate way, in my opinion.
100%. And this is the time, with this retool, with whatever they're going through, with this turnover of the old and the new, and we traded so many guys away at the deadline, that this is the time to do that. Let the young kids play, see what you got, and then let them make the mistakes. And like you said, if you're losing games 2-1, why aren't we seeing these guys? So great points all around, and we're going to give you a chance to make more. Thank you for staying with us, but we got to pay some bills. We're going to send it to break. We'll probably talk the CBA. We're going to talk more about what the Bruins did in the off season and the draft. We haven't really even touched that. So we'll have Ty back on after this quick break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back into the Hockey Hub. Kasey and Sophia joined by Ty Anderson from 98.5, talking Bruins off season. And you know what? We're going to have a little bit more fun with this, because I think we've all said what can be said. We don't know what's going to go down until the season gets going and these guys get through training camp. But I warned you, at least. We're going to let you put the GM hat on for a minute and talk about these lines a little bit. A couple different projections out there. And the main one that a lot of us go off of being daily face-off. We know what the first line is going to look like. Geeky, Lindholm, Pasta. Second line is projected at Zacha, Middlestat, Arvidsson. Third, Janot, Mitten, Patra. And then you got Beecher, Corrali, and Asimont. There's a couple names I was shocked that weren't even in the mix of this. Hustadinov being one of them, who they just added money to and value to. I know Katsi is another guy that had an end of the season injury, upper body that being. But what would you change with this projected lineup?
I don't want Matt Patra playing wing. I think he needs to be a center in this league. I think that wing, he just never looks comfortable. This is a guy that I want touching the puck through the middle of the ice. I think that he's got the vision, he's got the craftiness. So I would want him at center. And then at right wing there, I'd probably put Fabian Lysell. This is a player who's a first-round pick. I thought he looked good to end the year. He got better with more minutes, better opportunity. And kind of playing off what we talked about last segment, it's time to find out, right? I don't need him playing in Providence anymore, doing the weekend trifecta. I need him up here and seeing what kind of player he is. Is he a middle six scorer? Is he a fourth line energy guy, or is he a bust? We got to find that out at some point. And you drafted him over 4 years ago now. Now's the time to find it out, because we talk about players wanting trades. I don't want to report that, because that's. Again, I don't know anything about that, but if you're a first-round pick and you're still in the minors 4 years in, don't you kind of want a fresh start, right? And so I think you should find out what you have here with this player. So I would like him to make the roster. I have a hard time envisioning all three of Patra, Minton, and Middlestat making the roster. I don't think they're going to trade Middlestat now. It's nearly, it's mid-July. That move probably would have happened at the draft, but I have a hard time seeing all three of those players making this roster. And so if I'm gonna go with any of the 2 out of 3 there, I'm probably putting Patra in the middle, and I'm letting Minton begin his year in Providence, playing all situations and reassessing where we are in, say, mid-November with him.
Wait a second. I love this take. Obviously, Don Sweeney, something he repeated a lot was that guys are going to be fighting for positions, internal competition, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it all before. But you're saying out of training camp, we might not see Middlestat on the roster?
No. I think he's here now. It's just I entered this whole offseason going, I don't see how you have a lineup that has Middlestad, Poitras, and Minton on the lineup on opening night. I had a hard time seeing that, and so I think the window to trade him is probably expired now. I thought he would probably be a guy that, like, if you didn't love his game, and let's say a contender did, or a team that has a lot of second round picks did, and you wanted to move up to get a guy, that might be a way you clear money and move up the board. Didn't transpire that way, so I feel like he's here. But where does he play, Sophia? You know, Marco Sturm was on 98.5 The Sports Hub after he was hired, and he was talking about all the centers they had, and he said, Middlestad, we'll see. So where does he play? Is he a center? Is he a wing? Like, how do they view him? That's what I want to know, because it was kind of hard to get a read on him, right? Like, he ends the year playing on a line with Vinny Lettieri and Cole Koepke, neither of whom are here anymore. And so what do they envision for a player like Casey Middlestad, who, when they acquired him, Don Sweeney outright said, not our prototypical Bruin, but a guy that we think we can use in this fashion. So he's a kind of an interesting player, I think, in that regard, even, you know, without potentially being traded.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a big question mark around where he plays, how often he plays, and I do think that there's going to be some internal competition for that spot. But I get what you're saying, like not all of them at the same time. I'm so on board with the young guys though, with Lysell. Like, can we please just see what we got in Lysell? And I know that he had that stretch. I meant to look it up. I think it's 10 games at the end of the season, but he finally had a stretch of back-to-back games. Want to see what he's got. Fraser Minton, Matt Poitras agree as a center. And you never know. I mean, like we're hoping that these guys, where they were drafted and what they were projected to be, we're hoping that they pick up, you know, some of that secondary scoring. But all things, like, here's my take. If the healthy guys are healthy, stay healthy, and they produce where they're supposed to produce. If Lindholm has a better year, if Zacha has a better year, if Geeky picks up where he left off, and then you have Minton and Poitras and maybe Lysell with some consistent secondary scoring, this is not a bad team. Like, this is, and Sway, let's throw Sway in there, performing how he needs to. I don't think this is as bad as people are worried they could be. Am I off my rocker, Ty?
No, I think so. Like, I looked at this offseason and I said they have to find a way to add 40 to 50 goals. If you can score 40 to 50 more goals than you did a year ago, you're going to be around the top half of the league in scoring. And if you're able to do that and you get the good goaltending, you're basically going to be in the playoffs. You look at the way that the league has gone last year. The teams that were in the top half of the league in scoring basically all made the playoffs. I think the only two that didn't were Columbus, who they were in it until I think game 81, and Buffalo. You know, Buffalo is Buffalo, right? And so if you can get more goals and you can squeeze more juice, you know, out of this orange that is this roster, as you mentioned, those guys you named, like, it should be easier, right? It's just, does it happen consistently? That's my big thing. Like, there's a lot of pressure on Morgan Geeky to now just be a 30-goal scorer. You know, he was 30-goal scorer for the first time in his life this past season, but now he's got to be that guy. That's why he got paid, so you respect that part of the equation for him. But, like, they don't have a lot of pressure. They don't have a lot of fallback, you know, in the event that some of these guys that you're mentioning don't return to form or don't succeed like they did a year ago. And that's, like, the dangerous game. That's why I gave them a C-, because – you know, you're never going to win a championship on July 1. It's just not going to happen, as we all know. You're not going to win a championship on April 1, for that matter. But you want to have enough weaponry, right, in your arsenal where you feel comfortable that you can win games in a variety of ways with a variety of scorers. And so that part has to emerge. What you're talking about, like, we got to see that, right? And if we don't, it might be another long season. But I'm open to giving all of these players that we're talking about some actual rope, because we know they have talent. We know Matty Poitras has talent. We know that Fabian Lysell has talent. We just got to cultivate it. We got to see it. We got to see it at this level and see how it makes a difference for this Boston Bruins team.
You talk about weaponry, and the huge thing that's kind of discussed under that category at the moment are third and fourth lines. We've seen them help push the Florida Panthers to a championship back-to-back times. So kind of locking in on the third line projection for a second. Tanner Jeannot, Fraser Minten, Matthew Poitras. I like your take on Poitras coming in center. I've heard fans mention it before. His first 2 NHL goals versus the Ducks, he was playing along or central to Geekie as well as DeBrusk. But do you think that with this third line being Jeannot and Minten, two guys that are known to create space? Tanner Jeannot talked about it as in his induction to Boston. He can create a lot of space, which can create opportunity for Poitras. Poitras really good with his release and creating passes and kind of getting to the middle of the ice, as you mentioned. Nobody has to stay static as you're trying to penetrate the net. Then you got Fraser Minten. He's a pest. He's always around the net. Do you think that he can still be productive on the wing if he's playing with two guys that can create space and kind of polish off opportunities he creates?
He could for sure. I think for me, wanting him at center has everything to do with his vision, his poise, his ability to kind of suck guys in, and create an opening for his line mates when his game is on. And that's I really want that in the middle, because I don't know if you have a ton of that naturally right now on your pro roster, right? Like, I think James Higgins will do a lot to address that, but I think as your current pro roster is set up, you don't have a lot of guys that can do that. And so that's kind of why I want him in the middle. And I like the idea of Jeannot being his bodyguard, so to speak, because, the biggest thing that's kind of hurt Matthew Poitras through 2 seasons now of pro hockey has been just getting absolutely lit up, getting hit with heavy force, again and again, it feels like. And so I feel like having Jeannot there would help him, but also it's just, for me, it's the vision. I want that down the middle of the ice, because I think that can create some mismatches on the wings for his line mates when his game is going.
All right, I like that. I know, didn't he get knocked into New York's bench towards the end of the season, or was it versus the Rangers here at the end of the season?
It sounds
he could use a
right.
Tanner Jeannot. He could use a Jeannot.
And he's, the other thing about Poitras is that he's a good skater, but he's not like a burner, right? And that might lead well to a guy like Tanner Jeannot, where he's got good skating wheels, but like it's not going to be too fast for a guy like Jeannot, right? Like that, and that might be a kind of a weird thing to say, like for the player who's 20, 21 years old, but like that might, like I felt personally that the best version that we saw of Trent Frederick was actually when he was playing with Matty Poitras. And if Tanner Jeannot was a bit like Trent Frederick, maybe a bit more tenacity, I kind of like that one too, and what it could be, if the players can find their games.
Yeah, he had that 1-6 stretch pass to Frederick right before Frederick got traded. So I'll ask you this, kind of switching over to the draft conversation. Can you tell me what you would like for these lines to look like? Say that we finally get to insert a James Higgins into the mix, and potentially even like a William Moore down the stretch. We got a lot of centers, a lot of left-handed defensemen. That's driving me nuts. But who would you like to see get that first opportunity coming up here from the draft class?
Well, it definitely feels like James Higgins is that guy, right? I mean, he's got electric skill set, the puck senses, the speed, the vision. One thing I love about James Higgins is that he, and the Bruins love us as well, is that, he has been electric against his peer group, right? And so I think I'm really excited to see what he does at Boston College this year. I mean, because I think last year, like, there was a lot of people that knocked, kind of the season he had, but he was basically a high school senior. He was 17 when the year started, and he's up there as a point per game, and we're saying that's a bad thing. It's like, well, no, the context matters, right? And so I want to see what he looks like at BC. I want to see if he can be a takeover kind of guy and really dominate games. Doesn't have Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard, so he's going to have more opportunity to drive the bus, so to speak, for the Eagles there. And so I want to see more of that. And if and when he comes up this season, I want him in a top 6 role. I just do. I feel like that's, like, the Bruins haven't had a player like this probably since Tyler Seguin, but Tyler Seguin came into a loaded Bruins team. Not really the case this time around. And so this is a player that I want to see playing with other skill guys right away. Like that's almost like a non-negotiable for me, because otherwise I don't know if you're going to get the full James Higgins experience if he, at 19 years old, is being asked to drag line mates around the ice. Like, no, I buy the Ferrari, I want to go fast. That's kind of how I feel. And I feel like James Higgins is a player of that nature. That's just how I feel, though. I know you guys might feel a little bit different about that, just based on how important a draft pick he is in the development process of a player that you project to be a future franchise center.
No, I agree with you. I want to see him 100%. And I really like the Tyler Seguin comparison. I don't, in terms of like hype and everything. And again, back to the point before the break, this is the time to do it. Like, I asked Fraser Minton this when he came up, and, guys don't like to give answers that makes them sound like they're admitting that the season's over. I kind of asked them a little too soon when they were still technically not out of a playoff position. But we all knew that it wasn't going there. But I basically asked him, and I had a really long talk to Morgan Geekie about this. And he said it was a really good point that when you're young and there's pressure on you to, like, you're coming up, you may be called up for one game, maybe 5, and the team is like 2 points out of a playoff position, it's really scary, because if you make a mistake and you cost them those 2 points, you're like, oh, great, the season's over. But if you're, 10 points out of a playoff position, you can play a little bit more free and a little bit more loose. I know that we don't want these guys to be playing as though they're not going to be making the postseason. But again, this is the year. This is not the year that the Bruins got knocked out of the Stanley Cup final in 2019. 2020 is going to be their year, and they got to, make it and get back there. This is a year where we're like, maybe we'll make the playoffs, maybe not. I want to see James Higgins. I want to see, like you said, Fabian Lysell. Connor Ryan said a good trajectory for him would be to do his year at BC and then kind of come up in March. Do you want to see him sooner than that?
Well, I got to note that Connor Ryan is biased right there because he's a Boston University fan. So he's thinking that the Eagles are going to be done in March. Yeah, so he's just rooting for the Eagles to go like 0-30, and then he comes up in March. No, I want him to do a full season in college. I do. I think that, he's still so young, right? And the Bruins don't have to rush him for these reasons you're talking about, right? Like, what do we think this team is going to be? If everything works out, they're contending probably for second or third in their division, more likely a wild card team. And so it's not as if James Higgins is going to come in and put them over the top and be a Stanley Cup contender, and it's going to make them that much better in spring 2026. If we're wrong, Bruins, clip this, put it all over social media. Ty was wrong once again. But, because of that, this isn't Charlie McAvoy in 2017 where the Bruins just simply ran out of bodies and had to bring him up despite not really wanting to play him in the playoffs. Like you can be a little bit more patient here. And so I would like to see him get a cup of coffee with the Bruins by the end of the season. But I do want that full season, the NCAA tournament, the Frozen Four, perhaps, for given how good BC is projected to be. I do think there's value in that, right? And so I don't want to rush that. And I know a lot of Bruins fans are he's the shiniest new toy out of all the new toys that we've had in 15 years. But patience, going back to what we saw off the jump here, patience is a must with a player this important. When he gets here, I want him playing big minutes, but I'm not rushing the getting here. I think he's still got a lot to prove in BC, and not in a bad way, but more of a, you're the best prospect in college hockey, go be that guy. I want to see more of that in his 25-26 season at the Heights.
I'm here for it because college hockey is just about to get that much more competitive with CHL players now joining as of August 1st. You've got all the hype around Penn State now. I mean, immediately their odds are saying that they're going to win everything this upcoming season. So granted, the size, the competitiveness that he's going to be going against in this upcoming season, I think it's only going to make him that much better when he finally does put on a Bruins sweater. I wouldn't rush it at all.
Yeah, and I think we're so used to, Matty Poitras came up here because the Bruins lost Bergeron and Krejci. Charlie McAvoy, who I mentioned, came up here because the Bruins had 7 injuries on the back end during their series against Ottawa in 2017. You're not that team anymore. You don't have to rush that. You can take your time here a little bit, and it's a player whose development you can't mess up, right? And I kind of go back to, I don't know if it was breakup day or this past availability, but, Sweeney kind of acknowledged, hey, if we could do a redo, we probably don't have Poitras make the team in 23-24. We probably send him back to the OHL, but, he looked good in camp, so he made that call. It's don't do that with a higher ceiling player like James Higgins. Be patient. Understand development is not linear and that he's still got some more levels to clear down in the NCAA before coming up here to the NHL.
Ty, I loved all your takes. We didn't get to the CBA. We didn't get really to Gavin McKenna. We didn't get to a lot of things. So that means you have to come back on our show another time. Is that cool?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you guys know this better than you know this better than anybody. The summer, you didn't even know what day it was because I didn't either. I only know game day, practice day, travel day. That's what we know in this industry. So I got to tell you, I got none of those days between now and training camp. So I'll be around all summer. Anytime you need me, please feel free to call me, and I'll come on absolutely anytime.
Thank you. We loved having you on, and we'll bring you back another time. But once again, we're sending it to break, guys. Kasey and I will be back after these 2 minutes. And Ty, have a great summer. We'll talk to you soon. Welcome back to the Hockey Hub. Every season or every development camp, the Bruins have a guest coach, someone they bring in to help the guys and give this guest coach an opportunity to coach in the NHL system. This season, Kasey, it was Taylor Wenczkowski. She recently just took an assistant coaching job with Princeton, and I got to catch up with her one-on-one just about the whole journey, her hockey journey, and this big coaching decision and her experience at development camp. So let's listen to that, and we'll be back to talk about it after the interview. Taylor Wenczkowski here, the guest coach for this development camp for the Boston Bruins. We were just chatting off camera. One of your goals, you've reached many throughout your career, but this was one of them. What was this whole experience like for you?
It was amazing. From the staff to, all the guys, the young prospects here, they were super respectful and really nice. And, everyone was treated like a pro, including myself. And I think it just speaks volumes of, the organization.
What did you know about the Bruins organization? You grew up in New Hampshire, so you're a hockey fan, played for the Fleet and the Pride. But what did you know about them, not from a fan perspective of like how many, tickets they sell or whatever, but about the culture? What did you know about them before you got here?
Yeah, it's a great hockey city, and I was able to work upstairs 2 years ago and kind of get to know some of the scouts and the ECHL, AHL coaches, so I kind of just knew that it was a good group here. They draft and recruit in a way, we're just good men, honestly. I think they take a lot of pride in bringing good people into the organization. I think that goes hand in hand, just shows, what I experienced this week. They're all awesome.
So you are now an assistant coach for Princeton. What was that whole career trajectory like? Was that always a goal of yours as well, to coach?
Yeah. The end game's always been to coach. In the last couple of years of my career, I was kind of ready to move on and look into coaching, but I'm very grateful for my year in the PWHL. And it's been awesome to help the next generation. And I'm super passionate about the player development side. So just working on little details with our players and, some of the guys here, just making little adjustments goes a long way. And just to see them execute it, in games and practices was just awesome. It's rewarding as a coach, too, to know that you're helping these kids get better.
For sure. So what was your job in terms of specifics for this week? Is it going over video? Obviously you're on the ice with the guys, but how did you prepare? How long did you have to prepare to get these guys ready for development camp?
Yeah, I kind of knew since probably March I was coming. I think I more so kind of sat in on the practice plannings and, maybe gave a few tips here and there. But really just, being personable with the guys and just, helping them make little adjustments in their games. And then I had a big presentation on goal setting and within player development too. So I got to do that yesterday. And Quater said that they were going to try to steal one of the graphs I had. And just a little bit about the goal setting. And it's more of, okay, I want to achieve this, but it's more of how you're going to do it. And just putting pen to paper and just kind of making a game plan, because obviously all the guys here, they want to play for the Bruins and play in the NHL, but there's a lot of steps to getting there. So just trying to help them map out what the next couple of years could be.
Yeah. Now, when you were younger, and I try to ask this question a different way because it's been asked to women so many times about, the development of the women's game and the attention, and the answers are all great, but it's something that we talk about a lot. And so I try to ask it in a bit of a creative way. But when you were younger, you had goals for yourself. I don't know if playing professional women's hockey was one of them, but probably didn't imagine yourself in a Bruins sweater, right? And so now the fact that you got to wear one, what does that mean to you?
Oh, it's awesome. I got to play 7 years for Boston. I played 3 in high school, 4 professionally. So it's an honor to wear Boston across your chest, and to wear the B in the Boston this week is it's awesome. I think it means so much to represent this awesome city, and the state of Mass is the hockey is just phenomenal, and dream come true.
Now, I know you're still going to dip your toe into coaching and understanding what that world is about. Marco Sturm, the newest coach of the Boston Bruins, said that he loved playing, but in many of his interviews, he said when he started head coaching for Germany, his assistant for other teams, he was like, oh man, this is me. Like, this is who I am. Do you feel like the transition from player to coach, do you feel like that's where you belong?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, right away. Like I even, we played Harvard this year, and a bunch of my friends came, and they sent me videos of me just smiling on the bench and just, talking to the girls and getting them hyped up a little bit. And I just I knew this is where I'm supposed to be, coaching. And obviously I loved playing, and I miss, the locker room side of everything and the girls. But yeah, no, I'm definitely think I'm meant to coach and just help the next generation and, help them achieve their goals.
Now that the door has been open for women to coach in the NHL and maybe management, and we'll see more roles, is that a goal of yours, or are you just kind of looking maybe 5 years ahead instead of big picture?
Yeah, I'm kind of just, going day by day, honestly, maybe year by year right now. Yeah, I haven't really thought, long term how that would look, but I'm definitely open to that, and I think it's awesome, Jess Campbell at the Kraken is amazing, and I think that's just going to keep opening the door to, for the women to come in and be on the benches, or maybe player development, scouting, whatever it may be. I know there's a handful in the NHL already, so yeah, I mean, if that opportunity comes, that's something I will definitely consider and probably strive for, but yeah, love where I am right now, and just we'll see how it keeps going.
Now, development camp's pretty short, just 4 days. Is it possible to actually even see improvements in those 4 days from some of the tips and skills and advice you're giving the guys?
Oh, absolutely. Even if it's a little way how they shoot, maybe it's their top hand, just a little adjustment, it goes a really long way, and some guys can see, improvement right away.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I don't know how, what they get out of this camp. Obviously, it's important for them, but I don't know if the changes are seen right away, or
Yeah, or especially in the skating. We had Kathy and Fordo this week. They, some of the guys from day 1 to day 4, it's awesome to see the difference, and it's not my specialty, so it's cool to learn from them and just the little details when the skating.
Couple more for you. Summer is, officially begun, but now that camp's over, the summer's kind of kicking off. It's the 4th tomorrow. What are your summer plans? How early do you have to be back in the offices at Princeton?
Yeah, so the girls will come back right after Labor Day. So I'll spend the summer. I have a couple vacations coming up. Actually, Friday I'm going to the Dominican. Saturday, the 5th. The 5th I'm going. And then I'll go to Hawaii, actually. So I'm really excited for that. And then I'll get right back to work. Just a lot of recruiting and some camps, and then, yeah, just prepping for our season. And I feel like I learned quite a bit this week, and I'm excited to bring that back to Princeton.
If there's somebody watching who's like, damn, I want to do what she's doing and be a guest coach for Bruins Development Camp, whether they're a man or a woman, a young boy, young girl, what advice do you have for them?
Honestly, I think just follow your dreams, and if you want to do something, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and get uncomfortable, right? It's not easy trying to jump into different roles, or maybe it's all guys here. I think there's one girl fully on staff all the time, Andrea, the massage therapist, but then there's the social media, and obviously people like yourself.
Yes.
But I think it's a very male-dominated sport, especially in the men's side of the game. So I think it's an awesome opportunity, and just speaks volumes of the Bruins organization to bring myself and Kathy in this week, and just have a female around, and just the guys are super respectful, and yeah, I think it was great.
You prompted one more question in my head. How did this happen? Did you get a phone call? Was it an interview process? How did you get invited?
Yeah, it was an interview process with Parker. So my former Pride coach coached the Maine Mariners in the ECHL. So when I retired hockey, my biggest goal was to get to a development camp. And, playing in Boston and what playing for Boston meant to me, I couldn't think of a better idea than to try to get to Boston camp. So I got Evan Gold's contact from him, reached out, had a call, and he's like, all right, I'll connect you with Parker, and went through that, interview process with him, and then touched base with Adam McQuaid, and super grateful for them, and it all worked out, and yeah, it was awesome.
I love it. I love the grind. I love that you went out of your way to call too and make the connection happen. You know?
Yeah, I mean, so you got to do that, right? You need to, put yourself out in uncomfortable situations sometimes and just try to put yourself out there, and I think it pays off, and yeah, it's like a lesson learned too.
Such a really cool interview. I love that. And I love that she mentioned that she learned just as much as she was kind of bringing to the table as well. All the little intricate details that just remind you why Dev Camp is so important. And we'll see what these guys bring to their teams and organizations after this. And she'll be joining former Fleet coach Courtney Kessel for the Princeton women's hockey team. So that'll be pretty sick too. We'll miss them here in Boston, but it's going to always be nice to have some ties and start that new journey. Sophia and I have one more break here on the Hockey Hub, so don't go anywhere. Join us on the other side of this quick break.
Welcome back. We're getting ready to wrap the show. We've got a minute left, Kasey. So we're just going to talk about something we just saw on Twitter. The opening games announced for October 7th for the league. The Bruins, not in them, but we've got the Blackhawks versus the Panthers, Penguins and Rangers, Avalanche versus the Kings. Wait a second. Am I seeing something at 5 p.m. over here? Yeah. Okay. Here we go. I did not know about the times. Wow. Okay. 5 p.m. Eastern. There you go. That's the full schedule, guys, is going to be released on Wednesday, July 16th. So we have another show on Wednesday, and we will not have that because we go up a little earlier, but it doesn't matter. We can look ahead and we'll find out who the Bruins will be playing. I was hoping we'd be playing the Panthers, but we don't get Marshy, so we'll have to wait to see.
Yeah, maybe we will get it at a different time where it can all be focused on so much more, and the attention will be taken away from the intensity of Bruins versus Panthers at that point. But Penguins, Rangers, that should be interesting. Sully kind of reuniting with the old guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be back on Wednesday, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you at 10 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Peace.